Uh, Assalamu alaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. I know I literally just got done with the stream like less than an probably like about an hour ago, an hour or two ago. And the reason I'm doing this stream is because, I want to make this intersectional. That's why I had traditionalism, religion, secularism in the title. This is, the marriage dilemma, right? And I think in the modern world, we're really experiencing a marriage dilemma, a true marriage dilemma, especially in the West, which, I've been most of my life, not pretty much all of it. We have a huge problem in people, at least even wanting to get married, or when they get into marriage, even have the marriage be successful, because the ideal marriage is supposed to be a lifelong commitment. But the divorce rates seem to get higher and higher with each generation. We really wonder what are the factors. So first, I'm going to say what are the factors that I believe that we have a marriage dilemma. First off, to be very frank and very honest, feminism. Marriage was viewed as being this subjugative practice that men used against women for the very longest time. And you look at every single wave of feminism, one thing they always tried to do is view marriage through the lens of it being an oppressive tool to keep women in line. So especially, I believe the second wave, which happened around the 50s and the 60s, was really hard on dismantling the nuclear family and examining the nuclear family as being this oppressive tool that's, synonymous with capitalism and patriarchy and, archaic values, right? Especially, they really tied into marriage being this, they also, from a religious perspective too, even though most cultures do believe in a form of marriage, ironically, being this oppressive tool also that religion imposed upon people and human sexuality, especially the concept of premarital sex. So that's one of the factors. Another thing is economic reasons, due to the different time periods of different economic strife and things like that, whether the economy is good or economy is bad. You always notice when the economy is bad that sometimes it seems like marriages suffer a lot more, and when the economy is good, it seems like marriages, at least in my opinion, are more successful. And especially if you look right now during the lockdown for the virus, you see domestic violence rates go up. You see relationships get fall apart a lot easier and stuff like that. And I think a lot of it has to do with the human condition, also the pressures of society. Society, ironically, wants to value free love as we know it, right? Free love, which was really coined heavily into the American lexicon, American pop culture during the 60s and the sexual revolution, is that, hey, have sex and do whatever you want to do as long as you're not hurting anybody and you don't have to be married to do that. It's a package deal, right? So also what's going to come with that is, on the flip side, you had a lot of men be like, hey, why get the cow if I can get the milk for free, right? Like before that, a lot of women wore, for the most part, most women wore more of the notion like, hey, if I do have sex, premarital sex, I'm going to keep it on the low, whether it be because of quote slut shaming or whatever like that. I'm not going to get into that, but I'm going to keep it on the low because I don't want to lose prospects of finding a husband, because the more men I sleep with, the more harder it's going to be for me to find a husband. And then also, so that changed because the sexual revolution happened. It's like, oh, I have a boyfriend right now and I have great sex with him and we don't need to get married. Hell, we even move in and live together. You know what I'm saying? Because we enjoy each other so much. And then, hey, if it doesn't work out, we move out, we go back to our respective places, we get our own place, and then we continue the process. We continue the process again with other people, and it keeps going and going and going. And then somewhere along the way, when we get solidified in our careers or we just get tired of the dating game, we settle down. Right? And then for guys, a lot of the times it was like, hey, like I mentioned before, why get the cow if I can get the milk for free? So a lot of women would hold out actually. And actually, one thing that really comes to mind is Frank Sinatra. Frank Sinatra had that infamous mugshot. And what happened to that mugshot was he convinced a girl that he was going to marry her and had sex with her before he got married. And then, of course, he didn't fulfill his promise, and he actually got arrested for that. That used to be called breach of contract. So even on a legal spectrum, there was like basically things preventing people from having easy access to sex, right? So when that ended, men basically had free reign, and we were basically like, hey, I'm willing to do anything to smash, even, lying, cheating, as well as just, having game and having swagger and being able to be, charismatic or whatever you like to call it, to get access to sex. And I don't need to have this girl commit to me, and I don't want to commit to her. Right. So after that happened, right, you have the third wave of feminism, which is even more radical in a sense of how it views the family as being oppressive and stuff like that. Even though most women, like in our culture right now, still want to get married at some point, but they want to still have that as being an option after they run out of, basically had their fun for like X amount of years, right? The high school, they're having sex, sometimes even middle school, sometimes sadly. High school, they're having sex and having boyfriends. College, they're having sex and they're having boyfriends. Then they have their career. Then they're doing it like that, probably with a lot of guys they work with or people in their social circle. And then after a while, maybe close to when they hit 40, then they're considering getting married. And then, then that's when they're going to get married, probably have kids and things like that. Biologically, it doesn't always work out for a lot of people. If you, at that age, you actually want to get married and bear children, because we know that there is a biological clock. It is real. It is not something that people have come up with. The wall is real. And for a lot of guys, there's another notion of the bachelor, the permanent bachelor. There's a lot of celebrities, and I'm not going to give these guys clout because some of them I actually really don't like. And I think that they're hella problematic people. And I know there's a lot of celebrities too that have the permanent bachelor lifestyle. They're basically like, hey, I'm just want to have fun. You know what I'm saying? I have money, I have wealth, I'm decent looking. Or some of them are actually not decent looking, but they have a lot of access to female partners because that's what women are attracted to, right? A man with means. So they basically, could pull Hugh Hefner and then basically, have infinite supply of female partners, and they can just do their thing for X amount of time. And then maybe if they get tired of it, they can settle down when they realize they want to have kids, right? And so that's the current state of the culture I see right now. Especially you look at the hypersexual culture right now. I think both parties are kind of like, I even talked to a lot of guys, and they're like, even the most feminist guys are still like, I don't want to know her history. I don't want to know my respective girlfriends or future wife, fiance's sexual history, because I know that this day and age, she's probably been with a lot of guys. And at the same time, like a guy that really likes you, ladies, I'm just going to tell you right now, most guys that like you, they feel the same way. Like most guys don't want to hear about you having intimate relations with lots of guys. It's a turnoff. And it always will be a turnoff for the most part, unless a guy's a complete sleaze bag and he views you as a sex object and he doesn't care either way. Like some of these guys that wife up porn stars or date porn stars and stuff like that, they just don't care about that. And it is what it is. A guy that actually cares about you, he probably is going to feel some type of way about your dating history. And he probably would prefer if he didn't know, because all too often, sometimes we get disappointed in finding out certain things. It is our business, because if I am going to sacrifice my free time, my resources, and my last name, or even if I hyphen it, if I'm going to be monogamous with you, I need to know your sexual history, because I need to know what kind of behaviors you engage in, possibly that might enter this relationship. Women want the same thing, and women, for the most part, here's the ultimate hypocrisy. Woman, even when she wants to get married, I think one of the things that women are dishonest about, and I think if you ask almost most women, even though they're the most sex positive people or most liberal minded people, they want to know if their husband has had intimate relations with another man. And I think that's the ultimate hypocrisy. And every single girl, most of them I know, even if they're really open-minded, they consider that a turnoff, because one woman's biggest fear is, of course, their man leaving them for another woman. But I think even a bigger fear is their woman leaving, like a man leaving them for another man. Let's just keep it a buck. I think most guys really kind of just don't care. Like if a woman leaves us for another woman, yeah, it sucks. But hey, we'd rather have her leave with another woman than another man, because, some guys have confidence issues and insecurities to where we think that another guy, he's better in bed, he's better looking, he has more money and stuff. For another woman, it's like, hey, you know, you really want ours to begin with, so who cares? That's at least my perspective, and that's happened to me where I dated someone and they were fooling around with other women and they left me for another woman later on. But that's another story, right? So that being said, I think from a Dean related perspective, if you live in the West, I think one thing people aren't conscious about, and I think a lot of parents are afraid to have this conversation, by virtue of you living here, you're exposing your children to a different culture than your culture, no matter how hard you try to fight that. And all too often that culture is the hypersexual hookup culture that is prominent amongst the youth. It is prominent amongst people of other ages too, even people in their middle age. I live by San Francisco. I mean, people are still, hardly anybody's getting married in that area. It's so easy to have sex with anonymous people and have easy access to sex. A lot of people just feel uncomfortable in general getting married because they just don't feel comfortable with it because they're always worried about getting cheated on. I'm just going to keep it a buck. This is the conversations that I've had. So you can try as hard to raise your kids having certain moral standards, but as soon as they walk out that door or their peer group and things like that, when they go to school, when they go to work, whatever you like to have, it when they go hang out with their friends, you don't have that much control over what influences they have after that. Now, you can try to tell them how to have a perspective about those influences, but it's up to them as an individual to choose on what they partake or not. And peer pressure is a real thing. And all too often, peer pressure involves in the pursuit of sex. I can't name how many people I know, regardless if they're born into a Muslim-born family or any religious family in general, and how they deviate away from those teachings due to the peer pressure and the culture around them. So that comes into my main point is how you solve this marriage dilemma. If you want to raise your kids with certain moral standards, they're going to have to be lenient with what you approve as being a choice. First off, if you want to say from an Islamic perspective, you want somebody, especially father to daughter, you want your daughter to marry a Muslim man, granted, right? Or even a mother, you want your son to marry a Muslim woman. But we know that it is permissible to marry somebody of the book, as long as they believe in monotheism, right? Some form of monotheism for the most part. That's the way I interpret it, right? I mean, I could be wrong, but wallahi, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala guide us all, but it is what it is, right? So you want to raise your daughter to be somebody like that. And I do see a lot of non-practicing sisters, they pull off a front when they're around their parents and things like that. But all too often, they intentionally, when they get financial independence, they move away from home and they do the exact opposite of what their values that they were instilled when they were at home. Why? Because you've raised them in these environments for so long. And guess what? And you let your kids in a free mixing society, they're going to get approached by boys. Point blank, period. They're going to be, and all too often, those boys are going to have nothing to do with any of the values that you raise your kids on. So for one, you need to be proactive and seek out and vet people for possibly being involved or getting married to your daughter, at least the prospects, right? You have to be proactive. In my opinion, I'm not married, I'm not a father, but this makes common sense, right? If you want your daughter to marry a certain kind of person, be proactive and then try to introduce her to people. And don't just introduce them because they have nice money or something like that. Try to have somebody that kind of fits something in common. I know that's a hard thing because a lot of things we think, quote unquote, in common often involve haram things. Like, depending on what kind of school of thought you like to believe, or scholars. Oh, hey, my daughter likes music. Oh, this guy likes music too. Oh, my daughter likes anime. This guy likes anime too. Oh, my daughter does this kind of activity. This guy likes this activity too. And as well, they may not be the best practicing, but wallahi, at least they are from the same background that I'm from. So you have to be productive in introducing them and influencing them in that way. Same thing with mothers to sons. So if you want to solve this marriage dilemma and you're frustrated because according to statistics, I believe, at least in the West, 1 in 4 people born in a Muslim-born family either doesn't practice or just leaves Islam in general. That's a pretty high number. That's almost half. And why is that? Because I get into a lot of spaces and I do hear the grievances of a lot of kids, especially sisters, that they were a lot of the times, unfortunately, they were just put in a marriage. They were, they were introduced to somebody, or it was arranged, not forced, but arranged. Actually, in some countries overseas, and they moved to the West, I do see examples where it was straight up like their family heavily pressured them to marry somebody that was not in their best interest, that mistreated them, and then that triggered them and just saying, "Oh, hey, Islam in general is the cause of all my problems, and it's oppressing me," unfortunately. And those are actually some of the biggest, most vocal ex-Muslims in the world that I've ever seen. Is sisters that grew up in that environment, as well as LGBT Muslims and stuff like that grew up in that environment, and they feel like they've been mistreated, and then they go out and then all they do is basically make a whole career out of disrespecting the deen and disrespecting their own community that they grew up in. And they do it with so much vitriol, that is astounding. And that's something that I think we need to really examine and work on. And one of these days, I hope when I get enough sisters, because so far I haven't seen any sisters join this platform. I want to have sisters to talk about their experiences, but keep it as PG as possible and as halal as possible. But we need to have these discussions, because I think a lot of men are really stubborn, and we don't realize that we're contributing to a blowback that's going to affect future generations. Like, you chose to take your kids here. Granted, it might be a refugee situation. I understand, wallahi, you did the best for your family and chose a good prospect for them to flourish and have safety. But the culture you're raising them in, if you're not proactive in providing halal alternatives to what they're going to be influenced while they go to school or go out into the workplace and stuff like that, you're setting your kids up for failure. And you're setting your kids up to be involved in things that you're not going to be proud of. I'm just going to keep it a buck. Everybody likes to think their kids are sweet little angels and things like that. I can't tell you how many experiences that I've had seeing somebody that was born into a religious family in general, and then the very first chance they get to leave the household, they lose their freaking minds. So yes, it is important to raise your kids with values, but you need to be realistic, and you need to provide opportunities for them to meet people that are similar to them, preferably around their same generation as well. Because if not, and I'm going to say this, and let me be honest, I'm going to be as PG as possible. You really expect your daughter, by the time she's 30, let's say, she's done school and then she finally gets a career and stuff like that. And, maybe she's not around people that are marriage material, or maybe she just feels isolated and she's like one of the few Muslim that lives in a certain area, right? So she's not around any potential suitors. Let's be honest. You expect at 30 that she's been chased this entire time? And this is not a shot. This is no shade. But let's be realistic. And that's what my channel is going to be. I'm going to be taboo, and I'm going to be controversial. And I'm going to tell you all spoken truths from the things I've seen. I mean, when I first got here to the Bay Area, literally in one night, I met two sisters up partying like it's no tomorrow. And back home in my music scene, I met a couple of people you would never think. I mean, they look, quote, ethnic, or like they're from another country and stuff like that. And, maybe during Ramadan, they're saying Ramadan Mubarak, but they're not wearing hijab. They're wearing clothes like pretty much every other woman around them. They're partying, they're drinking, they're hooking up with people. And back when they go home, they act like they're a sweet little angel. If you, as a parent, are helping provide alternatives and showing her people that are potential suitors, you're going to prevent a lot of that just from the jump. So, and we need to have a conversation there's like child marriage, especially is something I disapprove of wholeheartedly. But if somebody's like fresh out of high school, there's nothing wrong with getting married. Yeah. Oh, quote, quote, they're too young. Whatever, bro. I'd rather have a kid, like 18-year-old kid fresh out of high school, get married find out what a marriage is about, have healthy children, because most likely they're going to have healthy children, than somebody that's in their 40s or 50s finally getting married. You know what I'm saying? Then they're going to try to have kids, and then they have all this emotional and physical baggage from racking up bodies. Because honestly, I hate to say it, that's what happens sometimes. Especially, I mean, like they go to college. I mean, dude, a lot of these colleges are just breeding grounds for mischief and for promiscuous behavior, for drugs and alcohol, all this kinds of stuff. Whereas a 23-year-old boy is struggling with his nap and is not married and thinking about, dude, I'm right there with you, bro. I'm older than you, but I struggle with this all the time, bro. And dude, it's really, really hard, especially wallahi, bro. Especially, this is going to be 101, bro. One thing that I really struggle with as a revert is, from my experiences, that's why I'm going really deep in this. I moved to an area and I try to meet a sister, and then she's more open to commit zina than to get married. And there's many reasons why I think that is. One is parents' approval, right? It's easier to go sneak around and sleep around and your parents not know about it than to marry somebody that your parents may not approve of. And I hate to say, a lot of it has to do with tribalism, and a lot of it has to do with racism. I'm just going to keep it a buck. I'm African American. A lot of the sisters I meet out here, unless I go deep into Oakland in the city, which is a little bit further of a drive, a lot of them are like from certain communities. I'm not going to say these communities because I don't want to stereotype anyone and generalize, but these communities definitely do not want their daughters marrying a black man, even if he's practicing. So a lot of it has to do, for me, exercise, productive habits. For me, YouTube helps a lot. Getting this out there and putting this out there and talking about it helps tremendously. And that's pretty important. Also, talk to your parents. Talk to your parents and be like, hey, wallahi, you know what I'm saying? Like, I want to get married. I'm having these desires. Especially talk to your father like, hey, dad, man to man, I'm having these desires. I want to commit zina. You know, I'm a man. Like, that's what we're built for. There's nothing wrong with wanting to have sex. It's about how you go about it, right? We're trying to do it in a halal way. Hey, yeah. Hey, I think everybody's racist. I'm just gonna keep it a buck. I think everybody's racist. Like, you know what I'm saying? Like, even like an African American, let's say they're African American born Muslim family, right? I guarantee their race, they would probably be racist against Somalis, or racist against, you know, people even there of the other African groups, because we have our own culture and we're worried about our daughter or son getting further away from us and separating from us based upon the family that they marry into. But yeah, talk to your parents, talk to people in your community, and I think that you go to your local masjid, and other masjids need to do this. A lot of masjids, for every masjid that I've seen, a lot of them, they really suck at this, at least where I'm at. They don't really avenues for young people to meet each other at all. And then they want people to use these dating apps and say, I even talked to my local imam. He's like, oh, get Muslim on, get this app, get that app. Bro, a lot of those apps, some of them are just either catfishing, or some of them are just Tinder just for Muslims. And so people are committing zina on these apps. They're just going to meet somebody, commit zina with them. Yeah, everybody wants the same ethnic tribe. So I missed one of your questions. Hold up. Is there a difference when you are born or when you're a virgin versus when you have already done it before? So one thing I hope to do with this channel is, I think you commented this on before, talking about my life before that. And yes, there's a big difference. And I'm trying to word this in a way that is halal, and I'm trying to word this in a way where it doesn't seem like I'm encouraging this behavior. But it is really different because I already had this experience with other people. So, but at the same time, I'm kind of scared. And in particular, there's one situation when I went on a date with a sister and I was thinking about prospects for marriage, and she wanted to go home with me. And I was like, no. Like, one thing I will never do is commit zina with a sister. Like, I would feel so guilty doing that because I already know what the effect that could have on her. Let's say I get her pregnant, or let's say even if I have an STD and I don't know about it and I give it to her, that could ruin her life. That could ruin her prospects for marriage, especially me being a black guy and she's not black, and she gets seen with me and stuff. The insinuations people might have. So yeah, I would never do that. And like, especially a lot of sisters, or some of them for the most part, at least I would like to think so. You know, Wallahi, may Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala guide us all. They're inexperienced for the most part. Some of them are just straight up virgins. And so me being an experienced guy, if I do end up committing zina with them, I'm really afraid of this thing in America. We call it getting turned out. And a lot of girls, especially when they have sex when they're young or when they're virgins and they get with the experienced guy, if that guy leaves, they still seek that and they have an appetite and they end up going out and seeking that with other men. And then so they keep on committing zina. And it causes a lot of heartbreak, mental distress, and things like that. And all too often they end up incorporating that lifestyle. And it's really hard to break out of that. I see that a lot with people that are born in, practicing families. They go to college or they go to move to a city for a job, and then they commit zina, and their parents don't know anything about it. And then when it's time for them to get married, it's hard for them because other men know that. And they're like, I don't want to marry her. Wallahi, like, she's been with X amount of guys. That's disgusting. Or even worse, they marry somebody that is not even Muslim. And that is very, very, very common. There's a sister actually that I work with. She's not practicing. And she recently, she was married to a Christian guy, a white Christian guy at that. And, from where she's from, of course, that's unacceptable. So she had a falling out with her parents. Then she got into drinking alcohol. She was drinking. She was an alcoholic. She was binge drinking. And then so you can only imagine what she's doing when she does that. Wallahi, man, you know what I'm saying? Allah, may Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala protect her and guide her. But she admits she doesn't pray. She doesn't do this. She doesn't do that. And then now she's moving back in with somebody else, a guy that she's not married to. So, and I think that might have had to do with her parents and her parents not giving her avenues to meet somebody that she has some things in common with that was from her own community as well. So, yeah, it's a big struggle, man. You know what I'm saying? And this is a topic I think that a lot of people need to have with themselves before they have children, especially if you want to live in the West, man, because it's just too easy out here for people to do things like that, unfortunately. Yeah. Oh, yeah. Sins are. Yeah. Exactly. And it is very important because you're having that experience for the first time, so you're humbled about it. And I wish I could go rewind time and revert back when I was younger, and then if I reverted when I was younger, I could have been introduced to a community, developed a community sense, gotten married, not have committed zina, not have gotten introduced to drugs and alcohol, all these things. And I think my life would be better off. I would have had more direction and less problems in my life in general, less suffering and pain. But every single time you do sin, you like it's harder to get that backdrop. And I think that's like the worst thing about, because a lot of brothers now, because they're not having access to getting married, it's harder to get married and things like that. So they're resorting to what? Pornography. And then from pornography, there's a lot of shame behind that, especially with men. When we feel ashamed of ourselves after looking at that stuff, we feel dirty, we feel filthy, or we feel like losers, right? Because we don't have access to women. We're not getting women, so we feel like we're losers because we don't have access to commit zina or to have sex or to get married, right? And then, before you know it, you're drinking alcohol. And then because you drink alcohol, guess what? You're putting yourself in situations to commit even more sins. Then you're not praying on time, right? Because guess what? You're hungover, or you're sick from drinking or partying too much or whatever like that. So you create more and more barriers that separate you from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Do you feel like it's harder to control the nafs now or harder when you were younger and a virgin? So I was raised in a Christian household, right? So I think it wasn't as hard back then per se. I had a lot of peer pressure to have sex. And where I come from, especially in my culture, if you're not a young man having sex as soon as possible, they look at you as being weird. Look at you're viewed as a nerd. You're viewed as a loser. You can't get any girl. You have to at least have a girlfriend. And honestly, people question your sexuality. Like my dad even did that to me. Even though he's Christian, you're not supposed to have sex in Christianity, even or any Abrahamic religion before this the marriage. He was just like, hey, why don't you have a girlfriend? Why are you afraid to talk to girls and things like that? I was a really shy, soft-spoken kind of guy, so a lot of girls weren't into me, and that's why I kind of got into the whole hedonistic drug and alcohol lifestyle, because that's how you get introduced to women a lot of the time, to girls your age, and often the girls that partake in that stuff obviously are more looser. They're more down to commit zina and get engaged in premarital sex as well. But honestly, it was real hard, wallahi, when I first reverted, because after I reverted, I moved to Mississippi, which there isn't really a community there. And I was doing some technical training. And then I came over to California. And California, there is a community, but it's very segregated. And in some places, it's mostly older people, in particular, older men. Most of the masjids here locally around me, except for the university ones, are mostly filled with older men. So, of course, they already have families and things like that. So it's harder to not use them, but to kind of introduce to people that are the same age as you, that are sisters, that are eligible for marriage as well. But honestly, it was real hard when I first reverted. Wallahi, I made a lot of mistakes. I'm not going to air my sins out there, but I was not a good practicing Muslim for the first 2 to 3 years after I reverted. I had my good times, like during Ramadan. I was on point. I was fasting. I was praying on time. I was making dhikr. I was making dhikr at night. I was praying Tawheed at the masjid. I was like not looking at anything that was impermissible. Of course, I wasn't committing zina. And then after that, it just seems like I fell back into those habits, and it was really hard to kind of balance it out, especially if you work or live in an area in general where there's not a big community and people your same age. Like, it's good, brother. I highly recommend meet other brothers your same age, and you guys have these discussions and work together to solve your problems, to help cover each other's sins and prevent each other from committing zina. I'm not an imam. I'm not a sheikh. I'm just somebody that I know what works for me. Now, I recently got into a community, wallahi, like guys at a local university. There's actually a huge ummah that goes there. They're around the same age as me. So I can go them and have them as an outlet, and then we can find productive activities to do. We can go out and play sports. We can go out and pray together. We can go out and have tea, drink tea together, and discuss issues, philosophy, religions, science, politics. And the more you're around other people, the more you're likely to stay away from committing zina, pornography, things like that. You have to keep yourself busy. Because if it was for YouTube, for instance, and I was just using the internet right now, I would be looking at pornography right now. I'm going to be completely honest. I was able to channel in these nafs that I have into something positive to get me away from that. And now there may be some people that say the way I'm talking about these things may be a haram or something like that. And wallahi, you know what I'm saying, may I be guided to the right path if I am wrong. But I'm using my nafs, my desires, and channeling it into reaching people like you. And so since I reach people like you, I know that I'm not alone. And so therefore, I'm able to control myself. So I don't know if that answers your question or not. But yeah, man, that's exactly how I feel about it, bro. I don't know really what else to say. You have to keep yourself busy, and you have to surround yourself with good people. And before I reverted, my biggest, and this is gonna be honest, brother, my biggest weakness was I was really lonely, and I surrounded myself with people that did not have my best interests. If you are practicing, you're trying to practice your deen as much, try to stay away from people that aren't practicing or that don't really seek to practice, because they will drag you into deviant lifestyles. I mean, there's a lot of people out here, they come from born families and stuff like that, but the first opportunity they get to commit sin, they do it. The first opportunity they get to go drinking, they do it. And because they feel bad, a lot of them, if they have a good heart, if their heart is not sealed by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala from a lack of shame and lack of guilt of what they're doing, a lot of them, there's the old saying, misery loves company. So they're going to drag you along to it. They're like, hey, brother, I know it's Juma, but it's Friday night. You want to go out and have drinks with me? Oh, hey, brother, you know what I'm saying? Ramadan just ended. Now we can go off and commit zina again, you know, and things like that. So right now, going through isolation, also call his friend, hey, you know what I'm saying, man, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala grant them Jannah. If that's what you mean by like they lost their life or they have died, you know, saying my heart goes out to him and his family and you as well. But hard to be good because I haven't got the brotherhood as much as right now. I'm craving female attention compared to college. Yeah, man. Because, I mean, the way we're made as men, we're made to admire the beauty of women. Like, wallahi, man. It doesn't even matter if the sister is wearing hijab or niqab or whatever like that, whatever clothes she wears, we still see that feminine essence, that feminine spirit that was put in her. And wallahi, we just look at her in amazement, like, oh my God, I want this woman. Like she'll complete me. That's why they say marriage completes the deen, right? She will complete me. You know what I mean? No brother prison? Oh, okay. Oh, okay. You know, that's good. But sorry, it's still such for his situation. You know what I'm saying? I wish you know, he learns from his experience and things like that. I'm really lucky. I'm not a perfect person. I made plenty of mistakes. I done plenty of stupid things. And wallahi, I'm lucky I'm not in prison myself. I'm only not in prison by the grace of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and his mercy. You know, he's the most merciful. He's the most beneficent. And every time I make salah, I say astaghfirullah. Like, forgive me for the sins I did. Forgive me for the sins that I might commit in the future. And forgive me for the sins that I don't know about. Because it's all too often. I mean, this world is young men in particular, especially young men that are, you know, dark skinned, regardless of what country you come from, or African or whatever, like you call it, in the West in particular. They're more than willing to lock you up to make an example. Their whole system around here is built upon locking you up. So, yeah, but craving female attention, bro, it's real bad. Honestly, I deleted Instagram. Like, I deleted my Facebook and my Instagram because after I reverted, I noticed that my intentions weren't pure. I still, you know, and then again, I'm not going to air my dirty laundry out the best I can, but I was still tempted by the same things that I used to do and the people that I used to do them with. Let's just say that. And especially Instagram, bro. Instagram is real toxic because the algorithm can kind of throw you away to where you get misinformation about certain things. And you also, you know, you're looking at women all the time. Even if, let's just say, it's hijabi models. Like, hijab is something that's supposed to be about modesty and things like that. Hijab is not supposed to be about it's just not just a clothing. It's supposed to represent something, right? So if you're going through your Instagram, and even if you're looking at, you think you're doing something halal, you're just looking at hijabi models and how beautiful they are. Your intentions in your head, you're looking at them because you want to be with them intimately. And, you know what I'm saying, we're supposed to lower our days. We're supposed to keep in mind of our intentions and stuff like that. And I caught myself doing that sometimes where I'll be like, oh, hey, I'll slide in DM and be like, hey, sister, how you doing? You know what I'm saying? You look so beautiful and things like that. And then, you know, sometimes you'll chop it up. They're like, hey, thank you so much, brother. You know what I'm saying? Salam, this and that. And it's like, is your intention really to get to know these women so you could possibly get married to them? Or is your intention you're admiring their beauty and their physical attributes and you're seeking some ulterior motive? We have to be honest with ourselves when it comes to that as men. Brother, you're an admiral. The earth is still good while honest people like you says, oh, brother. Thank you. That means so much to me, bro. You have no idea, like, the things I've gone through and like the last couple of years, even after I reverted, like, you know what I'm saying? The problems of life don't stop happening just because you accept the deen. You know what I'm saying? And you submit yourself to your creator. Like, you're still going to go through problems. You know what I'm saying? And we're all being tested in this dunya. And when I hear things like that, it makes my day. And it makes me realize that I'm doing something positive. That's all I want to do. You know, no, tomorrow's not guaranteed. I could die in the next moment. I could die, not raised from my sleep tonight. I just want to know that I've made a positive impact in somebody's life. Brother, you're young. You said you're 23. Bro, do not, if you take one thing out of this channel and me talking to you, do not make the same mistakes that I have. You're going to see a lot of stuff on YouTube, whether it be people about ex-Muslims or atheists or people that don't practice, and they're going to tell you how much fun they're having committing zina. They're going to tell you how much fun they're talking about drinking alcohol, how much fun they're having doing drugs. And wallahi, bro, like maybe, they be guided in the right path, but all too often it's just those desires are, a lot of them, into self-destruction. I used to really like this band called to be honest, music is my biggest naf. I'm just gonna be honest. So one of my favorite bands is this band from the UK called The Who, and they're really influenced by. There was one album they had that were really influenced by Sufism. They're really influenced by Sufism and Rumi, the poet, right? And there was also this Indian mystic named Mara Baba. Mara Baba didn't speak for 30 years. Like literally, he made a code of silence, right? And one of the teachings that Mara Baba had was, he said, doing drugs may open doors, but all too often they end in insanity and death and destruction. And that's true. I've seen it my whole life. Everybody I've known that's engaged in drinking and doing drugs has done something they regret for the rest of their life and that they can never come back from. I'm one of them. Burned bridges and ruined friendships, ruined families. Gone to prison or jail, or suffered, some of them are dead. There's one, actually, I'll give you two examples, brother. Don't let this dunya get it twisted. There's two people in general that I know. I wasn't really good friends with them, but I hung out with them. I partied with them. One of them was a girl named Bridget. She was actually the daughter of one of these British punk bands called GBH. I went to a couple of their shows and stuff like that. They're real cool guys. We used to hang out and party, right? So there was one time, we used to party a lot. So actually one time I didn't get to hang out with her, and I get a call from one of my friends, and he's like, hey, Bridget, you know what I'm saying? And, may Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala have mercy on her soul. She seemed like a good person, but she was misguided in her ways. And she was like, hey, they found her body, and it was floating in a pool in a hotel. She was stark naked. So God knows what happened. She was naked, she drowned or something like that, or something, overdosed on drugs, and she was just floating in the pool. People found her body. None of her so-called friends called the police. None of her so-called friends were there at the scene. Wallahi, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala only knows what happened that night. There's another guy I know named Chuck, right? He played music too. And Chuck, he used to party and, do intoxicants and stuff, but he never did heroin. And one time, the first time he tried heroin, he died that night. There's also another guy, I forgot the guy's name, but he was a musician too. And he seemed like he had a lot of fun. He had the life. And then one day he posted on social media, hey, I need a way out. That night he killed himself. Okay, sorry, I missed some of your messages, man. Sorry, when I get passionate about something, I get really passionate. Let me drink some of this vegetable juice. I'm trying to stay a little healthy, drinking vegetable juice. So, what we got here? Yeah, bro, it takes time to become a good Muslim. Even me, I'm on the path of it. Hey, that's why they say it's practicing, bro. It's called practicing. And some of the people that don't practice, all too often the excuse they use is, oh, it's so hard and this and that and stuff. That's why it's called practicing. It's about submitting yourself the best you can and asking for forgiveness and then doing the best, improving every day. You're exactly right. And all too often people get weak and they get discouraged. And also from the people that they're around too. And they say, oh, this is too hard for me. It's too hard for me to make wudu, to make salah. It's too hard for me to fast during Ramadan. It's too hard for me to pay the zakat. It's too hard for me this, doing that. It's too hard for me to memorize. People make all kinds of excuses. But naf, yeah, those stories of someone, well, yeah, bro, I'm not lying. You know what? And I'll have a whole stream where I talk about crazy things that I've seen. And people like to pretend the West is so safe. I mean, bro, actually do the statistics on murders, homicides, rapes, all kinds of things that happen in my country, in the USA alone. This is not a safe country. There's a lot, and we have a huge drug addiction problem, people driving drunk, all different kinds of stuff. But yeah, my biggest naf is women too, bro. And the reason that it's my biggest naf is because I've had issues with women since I was a kid. I love my mother just like any other boy loves his mother, but I didn't have the best relationship with my mother after my parents' divorce. She kind of looked upon me as being a burden, and she had a boyfriend who for the most part she loved more than me, and that created a lot of issues. I didn't trust women for the most part. It was really hard for me to develop relationships and fall in love. And when I did fall in love, it seems like I always fell in love with girls that I barely knew because I felt like I could trust them more with my heart. And that actually was a big issue. That's what started me actually streaming. My first few streams were about jealousy because the sister that I mentioned before that's not practicing, I mentioned her a couple of times. Wallahi, bro, she seems like such a beautiful person, but she's just misguided. And I feel like when I first met her, if I was practicing my deen properly and things like that, maybe I would have been able to turn her back into practicing and maybe married her and things like that. But you know what I'm saying? Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, he got us, as he wills. So if it wasn't meant to be, it wasn't meant to be. And, wallahi, maybe I was prevented from, possibly getting into a relationship that didn't work out. Yeah, Chirac, Chicago. Yeah, it's no joke, bro. It's no joke. Straight up, bro. Straight up. Bro, I found out reading on the companions and pious people is a curious heart. Yeah, bro. Pious people will inspire you to do better. And I used to, like, when I first honestly reverted to, that's another thing that put me off. I was like, bro, I'm not going to become one of those guys. Like, for instance, I really can't grow a beard. Right. So that's the kind of thing is like when people think pious, oh, you have a big beard. You know what I'm saying? You dress a certain kind of way. You wear a thrope. And this and that. I was like, man, I don't want to be one of those guys because I hate to say it. So they kind of get a bad reputation sometimes because some of them, especially if they're more of the Salafi kind of mindset, there's no diss to Salafis because actually a lot of them are people that we should probably be paying attention to with the things they're saying because they're actually trying their best to be like the Sahaba and, saying Rasulullah and all the people that were a part of that group and all the prophets, Rasulullah. So there's some people that aspire to be like that, but all too often, some of those same people really turn people away from the deen because a lot of them are really harsh because, they're really critical of everything they see. So they say, oh, this brother's a kafir, you know what I'm saying? Or kufr. This person, is saying this person's doing that. This person's dressing this way. This person's dressing that way. They're listening to music. They're doing this. And so honestly, our human nature, especially for young people, you hear those things, you're just like, hey, I'm just going to go that way. And that's why people get into really deviant stuff. That's how people get into, and this is unfortunate. And some of the things that this individual says, I agree with, but a lot of things this guy says now as I get better into practicing, I think are just outrageous and stupid. Mufti Abdulaith. I really used to like him because honestly, he helped me when he was one of the first, sheikhs that I kind of got into or muftis I got into that he would give lectures on this stuff and that stuff. And I was like, oh, hey, he actually makes Islam not seem so backwards and he's relatable and things like that. But some of the things he says is just like, bro, like, what are your intentions? You're saying straight up things that I think are just completely haram. Like, it doesn't take a scholar to think that these things are haram. Harsh, brother. Yeah, Mufti Munir. That's my boy right there, bro. Mufti Munir. Bro, I wish we had a brother like Mufti Munir in a masjid here locally. I would go, if we had a guy like Mufti Munir here, I would go to the masjid every single day to make salah or offer salah. Every single day to offer salah. Fajr, everything, bro. And during Ramadan, if there's Taraweed, he was living Taraweed, I would be there every single day. I love his input. But yeah, Harsh, and he said something, Mufti Munir said something one time. He was like, we have to be realistic. He's just like, hey, especially if you live here in the West, bro, you can't raise a kid here and just say, hey, you're going to be super pious. You're going to have to stay away from this. You're going to stay away from that. You're going to stay away from this. He's like, hey, I'd rather have a brother look at pornography than commit zina. I'd rather have them, masturbate than look at pornography. I'd rather have them, smoke a cigarette or smoke a joint rather than do this other greater sin that makes shirk, right? Like shirk's the worst one. So he's like, hey, if it's about being realistic. And he's like, I'm not encouraging people to do this, but we need to stop being so harsh on young people when we put them in environments where they're surrounded like this. You put them in an environment where there's nothing but alcohol around them. You put them in an environment where there's a lot of people smoking weed. You put them in an environment where all this stuff is going down. You know what I mean? And then you're wondering why they're falling victim to these nafs. Bro, yeah, he's a real one, bro. He's a real one. I'm glad, man. Dude, I'm so glad that you hit me up because I'm actually super surprised about, I think that truly is decreed on who we get influenced in our life. And, say, wallahi, I feel like Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala guides like-minded people to get to know one another so we can learn from one another. And I think that's what we're all here for, right? We're in this journey, in this dunya. And the only way we're going to make it through to be judged properly and with mercy is if we try to understand each other to make each other better. Saying, may Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala all grant us Jannah. You know what I'm saying? And if we are unlucky, then I know that, if I get judged and I know I get deemed unworthy, I will humble myself before my creator because I know that I earned it. Yeah, exactly. Go to the gym. Hey, so the gyms are closed over here. When I go to the gym, I literally just put on my headphones. Sometimes I try my very best not to listen to music, but all too often I end up listening to music. But I'll listen to something. It'll be a lecture or an audio book or a podcast or something like that, or something on YouTube. And I'm just working out. I'm not looking at the girls in the yoga pants because that's what it is. There's free mixing, right? I'm not looking at the girls in the yoga pants and checking them out and stuff. I'm lowering my gaze. I'm doing my workout. I run. I go on the track. I will run around my neighborhood, lower my gaze, and then I go back home. That's a little better than going clubbing because all too often, I'm just going to say this, especially as a young man, I'm going to tell you from my experience, stay away from clubbing, bro. Clubbing is the biggest exposure to not only for zina, but drugs and alcohol, of course. Drugs and alcohol rife there. And then there's also, I'm not trying to get my channel flag, but there was an experience that I had where I got drugged one time. So be very careful because there's predators that look for women as well as men. So be very careful. It's notorious in clubbing that people get drugged, all these different kinds of things. There's so many dangers of going to the club. And on top of that, clubs are dangerous also with crime. A lot of people go to clubs to find people to rob. They find people to kidnap. They find, all these different things to do to people, the scammers. There's a lot of scammers that go to clubs. They'll say, oh, hey, brother, I'm selling this and that, yada, yada, yada. They take your credit card information, and then before you know it, you lost $500. Jim is true, dude. Don't even get me started, bro. Don't even get me started. And that's what I was on another, channel. And I was talking to this brother, and he was getting on me. He was like, oh, brother, just because women wear this and wear that doesn't mean you can't lower your gaze and this and that, and you have to keep, be yourself pious and stuff. I'm like, bro, I go to groceries. Women are wearing practically, the yoga pants that are so tight that you see everything. It's just it's in front of me. It's in back of me. It's on the side of me. It's everywhere. I can't look at a YouTube video, even if guys are giving dawah without a girl wearing something like that. It's ridiculous. You know what I'm saying? I'm trying my very best to lower my gaze, but you have to be realistic, bro. This is the environment that we live in now, bro. I mean, what's even crazier is that girls that are underage are wearing that stuff. There's girls in middle school wearing freaking yoga pants. You know what I'm saying? Hey, what's up, Nicer? How's it going? Always showing up, showing the love or whatever like that. But I was talking about how hard it is to get married and people being realistic about it. If you don't want somebody to have relations before marriage, let's just say hypothetically, which you're going to have to, and you don't want them to grow up in to be the T word. We all know what the T word is. You're going to have to introduce them to people that they have something in common with. You know what I mean? Have them be introduced to the people that are around their same age. They're in the community or your respective community that they have something in common with to prevent them from going off there and then wilding out and then racking up bodies. You know what I'm saying? I was making Tasbih one day and I saw one was probably part of a bunch as a dude. Yeah, it's ridiculous, man. It's to the point now where even stuff like pornography is so mainstream. I get triggered. For instance, one of my triggers is I'll be on my cell phone, right? And then I'll look up something and I'm I I get a daily news thread, and on my daily news thread, something will pop up like, oh, ex porn star, this and this does that, and she listens to this kind of music, and she's a part of this brand. It's just like, dude, I already have that image in my head, and that makes me more likely to kind of seek that out, seek that information out. So yeah, man. Sorry, nice. You kind of got the tail end of this, but yeah, my spiel is that parents have a lot to do with it, and if parents aren't proactive and not selfish, and they're not introducing people to their kids that can influence them in positive ways and possibly be marriage material, then you're not really going to have any say in who they go out and find. They're going to find somebody, especially girls, man, because girls are the ones that get approached by men. And usually it's not the opposite way around, right? Most girls want to be approached. So if you have a beautiful daughter at that, she's going to get approached by a man. Even if she's ugly, she's going to get approached by a man eventually. And a lot of girls, even if they are good looking, they have self-esteem issues and they seek male attention. So all too often, that's going to start a conversation between them and this guy. Eventually, they may not initially have any interest in them, but they develop an interest because they have an emotional connection with this person. And then they're going to end up being involved with them. And I'm going to keep it PG, but we already know what that means. And I see it very, very often. I mean, for instance, in my community, right? My parents are always like, I want you to introduce you. I want you to marry a black woman. I want you to marry a black woman. I want you to marry a black woman. Well, guess what? My parents never introduced me to any black woman. Never. They never were like, oh, actually, recently when my sister got married and they were friends of my sister, but for most of my life, like I never got introduced to any black woman or any black girls that I had anything in common with, let alone just existing. Like, oh, hey, here's somebody my son could be interested in. And for the future, that could possibly be somebody that could settle down with. I mean, also siblings, right? Like you have siblings and you have friends. If your friends and siblings aren't introducing to people to, what use are they? What use are they to? You're not introducing your friends or your siblings to people that they can be compatible with. Like, what's up with that? Like, whatever happened to like the quote unquote blind date? Remember that? Like, people used to have blind dates and stuff. Like, people would just be like, and basically, a blind date can basically, viewed pretty much across the board as being arranged, right? It's something that's arranged. Is people are saying, hey, I think so and so would be great together. Let's introduce them and let's go out together. I mean, whatever happened to that? Like, people are so selfish these days, they don't even think of that. Now it's just get on a dating app and just swipe a bunch of people. And somehow you're supposed to meet somebody you have an authentic connection about based upon a couple photos they have and some stupid freaking summary that they have on there talking about how cool they are or how funny they are. So, yeah. So I'm going to end this right about now because it's getting a little late, at least for me. Usually I go to bed at 9. It's about 7:17 right now. Curly Whirly, thank you so much. Google, what's up with that? Okay, so, Curly Whirly, man, that was a great conversation, man. It seems like you're also jumping on a lot as well as Nicer. So it's good to see every single time I stream, even if it's just one or two people, it's the same couple of people each time. And then, wallahi, maybe they'll grow each and every time because it really shows that you guys are really interested in things I have to say. I'm really humbled. Seriously, I can't say enough. I'm really humbled for what you guys are saying. I'm not trying to get this monetized anytime soon until I build a following. But when I do, if you are interested in helping me project this a lot more, I am going to eventually get PayPal or Cash App or something like that to, basically help fund this. And the reason I'm saying fund this is I'm going to get more professional, get more equipment. So that's where it would be going to. It's not going to be going to me going out and partying or me going out and tricking or some stupid thing like that or buying video games. Like I'll use that money to get, video editing equipment, better streaming services, more equipment. I'm planning to get a green screen on the wall and have a background that plays in the background while I talk. So yeah, that's what I plan to do. So thank you so much. Have a wonderful night. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Curly Whirly, take care. You too, Nicer. You're amazing. You're here every single time. Love you guys. Stay safe. Oh, hey, yeah, if you want to design an intro for me, like I keep on leaving my email, man. Hitting me up, bro. Hit me up. See ya.